Hi, teachers. Welcome to Helping Students Feel Safe and Empowered Online. As teachers and really any adults in this generation who care about children, it's critical for all of us to take an active role in helping students manage the virtual world that they're finding themselves in. This is a generation of students that are growing up in just awash with devices and phones and tablets and laptops and internet connectivity and data. And in order for students to feel like they grew up in a happy world, it's up to us to equip them and to help them learn how to navigate that digital world. And I truly believe that as we do that, that our students can feel like the internet helped their lives and gave them powerful ways of creating and of communicating. And I feel like if we don't do that, they are sure to have experiences that end up causing weight for them going into their futures. And so it's really important that we take this responsibility super seriously. And let's talk a little bit about how to do that. So first of all, I want to talk about how to teach students, and then we'll talk a little bit about filtering so that we just protect students in advance and take some of the lift from them. So how do we teach students and equip them for this day and age? The first thing I want to talk about is preparing students for the unexpected. The question is not whether or not students will encounter inappropriate material, but when, how frequently, and what they're prepared to do when it happens. I guess this is sort of this is definitely an unfortunate reality about our world today, but students and children will encounter content that's violent, pornographic, dangerous, uncomfortable to them. It's just part of the world we live in. And yet some students are empowered to know what to do with that. And that's really a lot of what I'm talking about right now, is helping students know how to manage the different circumstances that they'll face. Students learn best when they feel safe and in control. I recently took a field trip of middle school students to the grocery store to buy some ingredients they needed for a cooking challenge that they were doing. And ahead of time, we rehearsed what to do in different circumstances when they were at the grocery store, just so that they would know what to do. And by doing that, they felt safe and in control, and they were better able to just get the ingredients that they needed and have a successful experience. That's what we want our online environments to be like as well. Students are more likely to feel safe and in control when they're prepared for the unexpected. So how do we do that? Let's start by listening to this clip from Dr. Linda Papadopoulos, who's a psychologist who's also an Internet Matters ambassador. And this is an Internet Matters clip, and I like how she phrases this. So listen to what she says.
We want them to feel empowered over their environment. We want them to feel that if things go wrong, that they're able to cope. And I think when it comes to the digital world, this is particularly relevant. You know, they're in an environment where ultimately they're on their own for a lot of the time. Ensuring that you speak to your child about the dangers online, but also about the skills and the tools that they have to deal with them is
It's imperative, she said. So how do we do that? What skills do we teach students and children? So I want to talk about 5 things to teach children. The first is teaching them to trust their instincts. Children have an innate sense of danger and threat, and really teaching children to be sensitive to when they feel like something seems dark or dangerous, or a person online is making them feel uncomfortable. And when that happens, Principle 2, tell an adult that they trust when something makes them feel unsafe. Those principles alone are empowering to students. You might think, well, all children know that, but it's really not necessarily true. As a teacher with young preschool students, I used to always teach my children to crash and tell when something popped up on their screen that they felt was inappropriate, and that was insightful to them. A lot of them didn't know they should just close their screen and then tell me, and that I, as an adult, would help them solve their problem so they wouldn't have to look at that anymore. But those kinds of things are just important ground leveling principles to set up with students. And then the next 3, I'm going to go into with more detail, but stay away from the unhappy web, go light on 4 other types of content, and then consume a balanced digital diet. So what do those mean? Well, those all refer to this graphic right here. Focus on the column on the right, the keep away from the unhappy column. So let's talk about each of the words in that unhappy column. The first is unreliable sources. We've all heard a lot these days about fake news. And it's just important to teach students to check the source and make sure it's credible, or else children grow up with a lot of misinformation and confusion that we could help them avoid if they learn to check for reputable sources. The N stands for not guarding private information and passwords. Students need to learn that their passwords and their login information is valuable, and they need to protect it and not give it away. The H stands for harming your personal reputation. A lot of children don't know that when they apply for college, when they apply for a job, their recruiters will check their digital footprint and see what they've posted on social media, what they've posted around the web. And so they need to be careful what they post, and it will come back to haunt them otherwise. The A stands for anything that bullies or humiliates anyone. That's a great rule of thumb for children to learn, is just to stay away from any post, any content that bullies or humiliates anyone. The P stands for pornography and violence. Let's just draw a line in the sand for children and teach them that pornography and violence will bring them down and make their lives and their families more complicated, and that they can learn to avoid those things. The P stands for plagiarism and theft. Children need to learn that not attributing sources, content that belongs to someone else, including music and videos, all of those need to be treated carefully, because otherwise it's illegal. And then finally, the Y stands for your in-person people and pets being ignored. So I like to teach students that the internet can't love them back as well as in-person people and pets can. And so anything that compromises their relationships with human people and pets is not worth their time. So that's the unhappy web. Now focus with me here on the top of this device graphic where it says use lightly. These are kind of like the empty calories in a digital diet. So social media, YouTube, Netflix, the news, gaming, all of those can be appropriate in moderation, but over consuming them is not living your best life. And I wish we could just say to children, look, just use the internet or don't use the internet. It would be so much easier than having to say you have to use your judgment and use it in moderation. That's just a harder level of behavior for children to learn, and for really anyone to learn. But that's the world we're in. And so we need to just help children see that there are levels of quality and worthwhileness when it comes to the content that's online. And so then let's talk about what to use abundantly. These are like the superfoods of what's available online. Things like communication apps. So FaceTime and Zoom and things that allow you to connect with other people. Life management tools. So your bank account and traveling plans and your fitness goals. Any learning apps. So things like Duolingo or apps that you're using in the classroom to learn. Any apps that help with work and creativity. So Ancestry.com to research your ancestors, or apps that allow you to do photography or compose something beautiful. Those are all things to use abundantly, and reasons why I believe that the internet can ultimately help children and all people have a better life, but only as we embrace some of the principles that are embodied here on this graphic. So I hope that some of these will be principles that you can teach to your students to empower them and to help them to know how to seek after the good and then avoid the things that will bring them down. And then another principle for teaching students is that it's really critical just to partner with parents on this one, because obviously students will have a lot of access to devices and digital technologies from home. So as you partner with parents, make sure that the materials you give them are accessible to them, and say it in a way that works with your parents and that will be accessible to your parents. Remind parents not to get angry or upset. And this is really a good principle for our teachers too. But if a child comes to us and says, I have an addiction, or I'm struggling with this, or I've seen something I've been watching pornographic or violent things and I'm stuck on it. It's so important for that adult not to be angry or upset, but to express hope and reassurance, and then to help that child get the help that they need to overcome. And then finally, be ready to support and empower your children. And that's just an important message to tell parents, so that they feel personally empowered and are ready to set that example for their children. And we really, as adults, can all lead the way for our children. Let's talk now about filtering content. So apart from teaching children, we can also protect children. One thing to note is that legally, schools are required to protect children. Any school that has received E-rate funding is subject to the Children's Internet Protection Act, which is a federal law that requires schools receiving discounts through the federal E-rate program to educate students about appropriate online behavior, so just as we've just discussed, and then also to have internet safety policies with technology measures that monitor students' online activities and block or filter internet access to pictures that are obscene, that include child pornography, or that are harmful to minors. So just be aware that that legal requirement is in place. How does filtering work? Well, it's important as a teacher to be aware of what your school or district does with internet filtering so that you're aware of what the policy is. So talk to your IT administrator or anyone else who knows how filtering works and really be aware of it. Ask them, does filtering apply only to school-provided devices or to browsing on the school's network? For example, if a student brings a device from home, is there no filter on it? And if not, could the school help install filters on home-provided devices? Just so you can offer that option to parents. That could be a helpful option. And then also find out what controls you can obtain as a teacher to override content blocks when necessary. Because the last thing you want is to give students an assignment where they need to access a certain app or piece of content and they can't because of the system filters. So you are better off if you know how to override those filters when necessary so that you can have a more nimble filtering system that's responsive and more accurate. And then when you're working with the school on their filter, and if you're advising the IT staff or working on this yourself, just consider the wide range of filters. It's not necessarily just obscene content, but also sites that encourage self-harm, eating disorders, terrorism, or suicide, images of violence or cruelty to people or animals, gambling sites, or chat rooms without moderators. Those are all really worthy areas for filtering. You are helping students learn to manage their own online safety and well-being. As an adult in this modern generation, it is up to us to help protect and teach children and to empower them so that even as they encounter things online that they wish they hadn't seen or that make them feel unhappy, that they have the tools to overcome and to manage their destiny as it relates to living in a world that has many virtual destinations.